Well, welcome to this week's episode of The Dental Guys. I'm Wes, the Dental Guy.
And I'm John, the Dental Guy.
John, this is the first AO Dental Guys podcast of 2020, and we are super excited about today's guest. Tell us a little bit about our guest today.
Yeah, this is, first of all, kicking off a partnership between the Dental Guys and the Academy of Osseointegration. And so this is really our first sort of co-branded, working together, partnering together to be able to produce this show. We're going to be interviewing today the president of the Academy of Osseointegration, Dr. J. Malmquist, and kind of as a bonus here, his son Michael, who is a partner of his, also an oral maxillofacial surgeon out in Portland. And we are really excited to get to do this because we get to, I think, hear in this interview about Dr. Malmquist's passion about the organization. He's been involved for over 30 years with the AO, has been at a lot of meetings over the years, has done a lot for the organization.
He began with the AO, right?
Yeah, one of the original
guys,
members.
The OG, right?
Yeah, that's right. And here we get to talk to him about what's coming up and to give you a little preview of what's coming up. First of all, at the meeting, we're going to be there covering the meeting with kind of some unprecedented access to a lot of the speakers, Wes.
Yeah, so we're going to be doing some man-on-the-street interviews. Think about corporate forums. There's going to be an opportunity for us to be able to interview key corporate people and ask the questions that you guys want to hear.
That's right.
Answers about, like, what does this product really mean for dentistry?
New products, new techniques.
Not only that, is we're going to be down on the exhibit floor doing interviews live in a booth space. Kind of figure it like post-game comments from some of these special speakers.
Yeah.
That first night during the welcome reception, you guys are going to want to join us down there after that initial Thursday afternoon meeting, right, John?
Right, exactly. We're going to have, some of these really high-level speakers there to be able to dive a little deeper into some of the topics that they've discussed from the podium and really get to, again, ask some of those questions that you guys and ladies want us to ask to make sure that you're really getting the full story. Because, when these speakers have to condense a presentation down into 30 minutes or 20 minutes, and the AO even has a countdown timer.
Trust me, it's time.
They keep it serious. And so we can expand a little bit on those things, ask those probing questions, and that's going to be exciting. And then coming up, throughout the meeting, we're going to have, those same types of interviews going on, and also possibly some new product information from the exhibitors, seeing things that we think might change your practice, and trying to bring you those relevant things. And then, Wes, all this next year, we're going to be doing some exciting things with the Academy.
Quarterly podcasts will be released throughout the year of 2020 with specific speakers that John and I have been wanting to talk to for a long time about the dentistry that's changing, really implant dentistry for the better. And we're going to be bringing those to you guys exclusively through the Academy. And I'm excited about that opportunity because, John, it is amazing to be able to speak to the people that are actually doing the work, right? Researching the stuff, right? That changes our day-to-day practice. But then actually some of these people are actually wet finger dentists like you and I.
That's right. And I think that the organization, for them to embrace, this format that we have, they want to have a model of teaching and education that really reaches out to the listeners that maybe don't always go to these meetings and find out, well, maybe should you be going to the meeting? We think you'll discover that through listening to what we're doing, you're going to want to get more involved with this organization, number one. Number two, we see that they are passionate about just education in general. They want, whether it's general dentistry, specialists, surgeons, restorative dentists, to all be able to have access to high-level content from some of these speakers who are world-class.
In this podcast, you're going to hear a lot about Jay's passion about the AO and why the annual meeting means so much and why they're having it in Seattle, which is a great place. I'm excited about this interview.
And welcome to this episode of The Dental Guys. I'm John, the Dental Guy.
And I'm Wes, the Dental Guy.
And this is a very special episode of our show. We've been talking about getting involved with the Academy of Osseointegration for the last couple of months. We've been talking about the excitement we have with this partnership. And now to really kick that off in anticipation of the upcoming annual meeting, we're here with the president of the Academy of Osseointegration, Dr. J. Malmquist, and his son, Michael. also an oral surgeon as well, in partnership there. Welcome, guys, to the Dental Guys, to the show tonight.
Well, thank you. Welcome to you, too.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. We're super excited, and we want to get a chance to really capture some of the excitement that we know you guys have for this upcoming annual meeting and talk a little bit about that. But first, Jay, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, about your position in the Academy of Osseointegration, and a little bit about both of you guys. Talk a little bit about your practice, where you are, what you do.
Okay, well, I'm Jay Malmquist, and I'm the president of the Academy of Osseointegration, and this culminates about 12 years of being on the board of Osseointegration. And I've actually been a member for more than 30 years and was involved with the very first meeting of the Academy many, many years ago, and have followed it and ultimately gotten to be on the board and then ascended through the chairs. And so this year I'm the president, and will be president until our meeting finishes up in Seattle in March. Our practice is
30 years.
Full 30 years, yeah, more than 30 years actually. And our practice, we practice a full scope of oral and maxillofacial surgery. So in addition to doing all of the implant procedures, including the placement, grafting, and all the associated supportive features, we also practice a full scope of oral and maxillofacial surgery. So we do orthodontic surgery, TMJ surgery, total joint reconstruction, some pathology, and of course we remove a lot of impacted and malpositioned teeth. So we have really a full scope of practice. And Michael joined me 3 years ago. We're both board certified by the American Board of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgery. And we have a rather robust practice here in Portland. I'll let Michael say a few words too.
Yeah, so I'm Michael Malmquist, and actually I joined you 4 years ago.
4 years ago.
But that's all right. And I grew up here in Portland, Oregon, but my training took me to Dallas, Texas. And it was there that I really got a niche for the TMJ. So it was great to come back and work with someone who's very well known with dental implants, but to know that he does practice a full scope surgery practice. So we've enjoyed working together. I know some father-son tandems don't quite work out, but we're making it work. And we just built a brand new state-of-the-art facility right on the waterfront in downtown Portland. And
Nice.
So it'll be 2 years in April. And we've got a full-scale OR that we're getting certified right now, and a full-time anesthesiologist that works for us. So
Wonderful.
So
That's
you'd be
awesome.
interested, with your technology interests as the dental guys, we have a full capability of streaming out of our OR, so we can do procedures and actually send it back right to your desk there and let you watch what we're doing.
we have a high-definition camera that comes out of the ceiling.
Yeah, so we have a camera right in the ceiling.
Love it.
That's
Love
awesome.
it. That's right up our alley. And yeah, you mentioned Portland, and interestingly, the meeting is right down the road, right?
So
in Seattle.
that's right. That's just coincidence. I mean, I don't have any control over which meeting is going to be the meeting that I'm president at, because the meetings are picked out 6, 7, 8 years out. It's really that important because we're such a big organization. We're more than 5,000 members. Our meetings have to be at a large convention setting. So it's just coincidence that I only have to drive 160 miles north to Seattle to be at the meeting, which is really quite exciting.
Yeah, Seattle's a great town. We've been there before for the AO, and tell us a little bit about what Seattle gives members of the AO.
Well, I think with Seattle, we have, first of all, a beautiful setting. In the spring, it can be absolutely gorgeous, but it can also be a little bit rainy. We never know for sure what's going to happen. But we have some venues planned in association with the meeting that are going to be quite spectacular. Probably our signature event's going to be able to have anybody that signed up for the meeting will be able to attend the President's event, which will be a 3-hour visit to the Boeing Museum. And some people will say, oh, well, I've been to the Boeing Museum, but they have a new exhibition where they have a whole series of static aircraft. So you can walk through an old President Air Force One, you can walk through the Concorde, you can walk through the first 747, the Dreamliner, all of these different airplanes that are actually underneath cover, but outside. So we have it for a full 3 hours. So it's going to be quite spectacular for anybody that attends the meeting. And it's all part of the initiate or the fee for joining the meeting. So there's no additional costs. And of course, there'll be food and beverage.
John, that's always
Nice.
one of our favorite things is because the AO always opens up, a special venue. We get excited about it because, again, we are kind of, junkies when it comes to air and space. And this is another one of those opportunities, like if you're a part of the AO this year, that you get to go eat dinner and have hors d'oeuvres and talk to people and kind of mix. And it is a special situation every time we get to be a part of it.
The conversations that happen around the the bar there around the hors d'oeuvres are very interesting because you get some of the speakers in a more comfortable setting sometimes, and you see some interesting interactions and sometimes even some debate. Hopefully no one throws cocktail olives at anyone else, but it's, it can get interesting down there. And that's what we love. We live for that stuff, to get to speak directly, to have access really to a lot of the speakers, to get to just kind of get to know them and network with your friends. And this is an opportunity that you don't get. And of course, plus downtown Seattle, some guys are throwing fish, those types of things,
That's right.
There's all the
Pikes
other
Peak.
Pikes Peak.
Market.
I mean, you get all the or Pikes Market, that's right.
Yeah.
And you might even get to catch a glimpse of Matt Rainier if you're very lucky. You never know.
And some people want to go to the first Starbucks, which is right there.
Yeah.
And also going back to the museum, all of the simulators will be on. So you'll be able to operate all the simulators within the exhibit, which is not always the case when you're there just as a private party.
And the music scene. People that are into music, you know.
Yeah, there's
So
always good music there. That's a good point.
We're really excited.
Yeah. So from you mentioned earlier that you've been involved with the Academy of Osseointegration since the very beginning. And here we are some 35 meetings later, and you're the president, and you're a part of helping this meeting kind of be what it is, which the title of this year's meeting is Evolving Technologies in Implant Dentistry. And one of the things that the Dental Guys has always had a part of our practice and our podcast is always look at what is next level. And that's what this year's meeting's about, really, is essentially what is evolving in technologies in implant dentistry that allows us to go to the next level. What are some of the things that you think they're going to be affecting implant dentistry in the coming years? But first, before you answer that, talk a little bit about why you guys chose this theme.
Well, I think it's important that we understand that we're constantly moving forward with the practice of medicine and dentistry. I think that's the key event here. And we thought it was very important to sort of begin to look at the movement from analog to digital. And so the whole concept of the meeting will be how and why and the ways we move from analog, which is the way many of us were trained, into the digital technology, which is where the future is. So everything from robotic surgery to digital imaging to digital impressions, all that'll be discussed, and we have it divided up into surgical and prosthetic tracks. So regardless of your interest as either as a surgeon or as a restorative person or as both, you're going to have an avenue of education that you can follow through several different tracks within the day. So you could pick one side or the other side to go to. But I'm really excited. First of all, I want to put a plug in for my chairman of the meeting, who is Craig Mish. And I think you guys may be able to interview Craig as a separate podcast. But Craig put the meeting together essentially. And the keynote speaker is quite exciting. It's Catherine Moore. And she is really the person who developed robotic surgery. And so if you think about today in medicine and to some degree in dentistry, the importance of robotic surgery as it relates to eliminating some of the pitfalls with mistakes, surgical mistakes, and making the surgical procedure easier, she's really going to be the keynote speaker and talk to that. And then along with that, right after her, is Bao Goldberg. And Bob is the past chairman of regenerative medicine at the university, or Georgia Tech University, but has recently taken on the position of director and head of the University of Oregon Initiative, which is the complete rebuilding of the science department at the University of Oregon, in large part based on a grant given by Phil and Penny Knight for $500 million.
Wow.
And so they're rebuilding the entire university science department, and it's Bob's position to be in charge of that. So he's going to talk about the future of bioengineering in medical devices and regenerative technologies. So we really start the meeting off with a real bang with regards to the experts.
Yeah, and I think about robotic surgery. Where medicine has taken that, and you're starting to see, as you guys are well aware, new technologies in implant dentistry with, say, navigational surgery, really starting to make a little bit more of a splash. And Michael, speak to that a little bit. When you were in your training, did you guys get to play around with some of that technology, and what do you think about that? Kind of being more new to the world of private practice.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't worked too much with the navigation. I've played around with it with the X Guide, but and so we didn't have that available quite yet. But we did a lot with CT guided surgery and prosthetics.
Yeah,
certainly. I think cone beam technology has changed implant dentistry for the better, and I think both of you could speak to, being that you've just built a new practice, how that technology alone has really helped us. And that's going to be one of the technologies that is used into some of this robotic robotic technology. Allows us to place implants even more accurately and more consistent, and without fear of injuring the patient, or to try to achieve something prosthetically that is very challenging a lot of times in debilitated patients. So I know you guys have had a lot of experience in cone beam. Talk a little bit about some of the technologies like cone beam technology that you feel like that you've incorporated into your practice that really helps you to go next level.
I'll take that real quick. So we have the newest and latest iCat cone beam CT, and what we did was we've incorporated our screens in our consult rooms are interactive. They're display 10 screens, and so it really allows the patient to visualize exactly what we're doing in their touch screens. So they're basically giant whiteboards, and then we can sit there with the new softwares and show them exactly what an implant looks like, how it's going to go, and where it's going to go precisely into the bone. Then utilizing the trios, we can incorporate their impression right into their scan. And it's like you said, make it a much easier and less invasive procedure and more precise.
Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. Now, one of the things I've always loved about the Academy of Osseointegration is that there's a balance between cutting edge, but also evidence. And I think that that's an important thing that you don't see that all the time, even in some more major organizations. We know that talking about what's new is very important, but also balancing that with what's proven and what is evidence-based. And we were looking back, especially Jay, some of the history of the things you presented on, and some of your publications going back. And definitely looked like evidence-based practice was very important to you. And I just wonder how do you feel that the AO reflects that at the annual meeting, and why is that important these days?
So that's a great question, and for everybody listening, that was a question that you developed that we didn't plant, and I think that's really important. The AO is very proud of the fact that it's very strong in presenting evidence-based approaches to everything. So we at the AO really feel strongly about the science that we provide the practitioner. And we think science is very important in terms of supporting the processes that we do. So that's probably what we think is one of the things that sets AO off from other organizations, is that we are so strong in supporting the science of what goes into implant dentistry. And I know that the board would be very happy if I said this, and that is that the board, a member, all of us, I think there's 12 of us on the board, we vet every single speaker to make sure that they're science-based. And so that's nobody up in front of the organization, say in Seattle, sort of selling their wares, but rather talking about the science that is based for what we do, and that's really important in this day and age.
Yeah, and even to the point where I remember a few years ago, we were in one of the corporate forums, and one very famous, very well-known speaker was at that time talking about full arch zirconia hybrids, and this was a very new technology at the time, and they were doing it at a particular grad pros program, and he said, "Yeah, we're doing this," and he showed this amazing presentation, and immediately at the end, probably 30 hands went up when the question period, and people were said things like, "How many of these have you done? How many failures have you had? How many publications have?" And this was directly after this presentation, and this was not in the big meeting, but this was a smaller part of the meeting. But the point being that people there are very interested in the vetting process. That this is, if somebody comes up and says something that doesn't really fit, you might even have a speaker that would talk a little bit about that and ask questions about that and make sure that the people that are at this meeting are. I think we feel that. We feel that when we're at the AO, is we feel that there's this air of care about making sure that the statements that are made are supported well. And I think that's something that, again, we don't see as much, and we'll be talking at the AO about this a little bit in our lecture about what has happened in social media and the fact that many times there's a lot of things that are put out there that are, it's very easy to get information out there, but what's needed is vetting and evidence and science to really back that up. And we love the fact that what does that mean to you guys in your private practice? Talk a little bit about that in your private practice. When you say evidence-based practice, what does that mean to you guys? How do you take what you look at in the literature or at the meetings and maybe translate that to make your practice unique, or how does that change your practice?
I'll take a stab at that first, and then Michael can talk about it. But first of all, I just want to say that we believe in this so strongly that in our waiting room, in large bold block letters across one wall, we have that we are an evidence-based practice. And that means essentially to our patients that none of our patients are experimental animals. We only practice with them what we believe is something that's based in science and works well for them. So we have to have a certain amount of understanding of the knowledge before we're going to try a particular product or technique on the patient. We're not going to, see one, do one, teach one, so to speak. So it's very important to us, and we try to set ourselves aside in our own private practice with the concept or tagline of evidence-based practice. But, we carrying that forward, that's also the way the AO feels about how they present information. And we even have a lunch and learn, so to speak, but it's called Lunch with the Masters. And people can sit down in groups of 20 or 30 and spend time one-on-one or in small groups talking with the experts from all over the world. And most of our keynote speakers have a luncheon with a group of speakers. Some of them are already probably sold out.
So this is a question we get asked daily because of that sign on our wall. And the answer I give the patients is an evidence-based practice relies on the scientific evidence for guiding our decision-making. And so, the goal is to eliminate unsounded or outdated practices in favor of more firmly grounded scientific research.
Do you think that are you seeing that getting better or worse out in your world? I mean, is that something that we really are having a problem with? Because I think we are. I mean, what do you guys say to that? I mean, is it something you're having to fight more and more, or do you think that it's it's getting better, or what do you think about that?
Well, I think that the problem is actually getting worse, and I think that we have to be careful about what we suggest is science and what we suggest is something that's just a technique or something that is fad. And a good example I would use is the various discussions that you all see and we see on blood modifiers, and the suggestion that blood modifiers influence bone grafting, when in fact we know the science simply does not support that. So we tell patients it's going to help you heal, but it's not going to make your bone graft better. It doesn't, there's no science to support that. And that, to me, is an area that is really overspoken right now in the clinical world. Another one that I've worked very hard in for more than 20 years is bone proteins and some of the issues with bone proteins. And some of the proteins are very clearly osteogenic, and some of the other so-called bone proteins are in fact nothing but mitogens that cause cells to just proliferate faster, so they don't really influence new bone. So these are things that we're very careful when we talk with our patients, and I know the AO, when they look at speakers, to make certain these things are not misrepresented. But I think we have to be very careful. Dentistry has to be very careful about what can be done. And some of the areas of navigational surgery and navigational guides and stuff also have to be looked at very carefully, because some of these guides are not the panacea that they're made out to be. And I know that Craig and his reviewing speakers looked at this very carefully to make sure that nobody was up there misrepresenting what they were doing.
One of the things that we love about the Academy is the fact that you all encourage science, and part of that encouraging science is trying to get people to come to these collaborative meetings. And I say it's a collaborative meeting because of what you guys do to try to bring people into a conversation. You have those mornings with the masters and those luncheons, and we've been a part of all those things, and even bringing corporations to be able to have a conversation around maybe product. And that is an important thing, but we've been a proponent of getting people to come to some of these meetings. It's kind of, let's say, for lack of a better term, a lost art to travel, it seems like, and come to a meeting like this. And tell us a little bit about why do you think it's important to actually travel to a meeting like this and collaborate?
Well, I think that's a great question, because one of the problems that we run into as an organization is the fact that most everybody today thinks that they can get their CE or their training over the internet or over podcasts or over webinars and things like this. But one of the keys to this is the opportunity to come and have the interaction with the various specialties. The AO is kind of evenly divided between perio, oral surgery, prosthetics, and general dentistry. It's the only organization that exists out there that is so evenly divided and well represented both in the boards and in the educational pursuits. So having people come together and just network is key. And I don't think there's enough networking face-to-face. There's no substitute for face-to-face networking, or as you've already said previously, having a discussion over a drink at the president's event or something, talking about a particular procedure. So it's key. There's the people you meet and the experiences you have at these meetings are something you never forget the rest of your life. And the opportunity to be able to ask and go one-on-one with some of the world's experts is also something you don't get the opportunity to do over the internet.
And just find out what people are doing out there. That's what I find fascinating when I go to meetings, is see what's working for other people that may not be working for you.
Yep. And have that conversation after the lecture, is always enlightening, and being challenged, and then, turning to the person next to you and saying, so are you doing that, in your practice? And what is that, what is that meaning for you? And do we change is always the question. Do we change? And when? And when does that time come? How much evidence is enough to change your practice? When we're at the meeting, one of the things we're going to have an opportunity to do, Wes and I, is to interview some of these speakers. We're excited about that because AO has graciously allowed for us to be kind of a part of the meeting in that way, that we will have some of the speakers be able to come down maybe after their lecture, and we can take some of the things they've talked about and kind of dissect them a little bit more, ask some questions. And we're excited about that because not only the people we'll get to talk to, but also the topics. Who are some folks that, I don't know, maybe it's just a personal interest that you guys have, or maybe it's speakers that, you think are more dynamic, topics you'd like to see us to cover, people you'd like to see us interview that you think would be interesting to our viewers, our listeners?
Well, I think that's a great intro into what I was going to say. And if you just look at the first afternoon, Thursday afternoon, opening ceremonies, and after our initial keynote speakers, the opportunity to have on the same program at the same time Christian Coachman, Marcus Abode, and Frank Spear, all within just an hour and a half of each other, you've got a cross-section of some of the most impressive individuals in the entire world in terms of education and what they can offer. And you look at everything from the digital workflow to Frank talking about the terminal dentition. And he's fascinating because he's got a long period of time where he's taken care of restorative needs of patients. And one of the things he talks about is the fact that not every tooth has to be removed. That, even though we think implants might be a panacea, he'll talk about the fact that they're not, and he'll show. And I would think, from your standpoint, interviewing him would be a remarkable event to have him talk about some of these things, because he gives another perspective that sometimes we forget about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when he presented the last time on horizontal root fractures, and he would show a picture of this horizontal root fracture that was, say, 2/3 down the root, and then he would say, well, what do you think about this implant, right? And then he would show, 20-year follow-up of the same tooth looking great, and it challenges the whole way that we think about some of these patients that we would assume, it's an implant, it's an implant, it's an implant. And sometimes when we go to the AO, that's the other thing that we are struck by. Here you are, 30 plus years. We saw Thomas Albrechtsen talk about some of the same idea with when do we remove an implant? And he showed some implants that he would put a slide up and it would be, 50% bone loss, 70% bone loss. And he would say, oh, remove it, correct? And then he would say, what if I showed you this follow-up x-ray? And what would you think then? And what if I told you that was 30 years later? And you don't see many meetings where you can have a clinician who's been in practice, not only in practice, but in research at a high level, presenting follow-up over 30 years of restorative or implant cases. And like you say, we're going to have multiple people that are going to be presenting from the podium. I think we might want to focus in and you kind of already brought it up without us having to on some of the blood additives and
let's geek out a little bit on
that. We'd love to have some conversations, maybe with you. I don't know. Maybe we need to have you on during the meeting, because this is something that has been very controversial and definitely has been. We have to be careful here, but it's been, there's been some products that have been, sold as a result of some of those discussions. I think it'd be great to have a couple folks on to talk about what should we be saying to patients about some of these things.
So you have an opportunity with some of the speakers that are there. I'll just give you a couple of names that you could tap into. Tara Aglios, who is a DDS PhD MD researcher at UCLA, she could talk to you for hours about some of the blood additives because she has done so much of the basic research on it. So she'd be a good person. Talking to Craig Mish would be good. He has a very definite feeling about these things. So you have a lot of options while you're there to interview these people and get a good understanding of how they feel about what's going out in the clinical world. And I also might add, just while I've got your thought process, you talked a little bit earlier about who else you might interview. We have a team coming from Perth, Australia, Brent Allen and Ludlow, prosthodontist and oral and maxillofacial surgeon, and they're going to make a presentation on the second day that you'll find just fantastic acting with the digital world and the facial world and facial aesthetics and the effects and their clinical work coupled with their digital work is just phenomenal in the way that they're going to present these patients, and so that it's a time that you don't want to miss, and it's two people that would be fascinating to interview. And we're giving the Brannemark Award to Patrick Henry he's from Australia, and other than Professor Brannemark and George Zarb, probably Patrick Henry is one of the most famous people in early osseointegration in the world. And he's graciously accepted and is coming from Perth, Australia, which is halfway around the world, to receive this award. And he'd be fascinating to interview also. So he could take you from where we used to be, and Ken and Brent Allen, they can bring you up to where we are today. So it's a real long period to traverse in your interview process if you wanted to.
Love it.
Michael, you're a new grad, let's per se. According to the AO, that's anybody 10 years out and under. Yes. And what would you say to a new grad about coming to the annual meeting?
I think it's just what we were touching on earlier. It's a chance for you to get out and network and be part of the young lecturers, young clinicians. They even have there's a whole side meeting for the young clinicians. Yep. So there's an opportunity to get out and face to face with other colleagues. There's nothing better than to sit down and have a beer and talk dentistry with some of the guys you don't get to see very often, or you see on Instagram, or you see on the social media networks, and it's an opportunity to put a face with a picture or some of the social media influencers.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that I think is exciting. That's, and again, we don't want to blow our whole lecture here, Wes, but when we're talking about, the social media side of it, which has come up a couple times just talking this evening, that is exactly where the great things can come. If you're challenged at a meeting like this and you have that mindset of being somebody who's plugged into those things, it's a tremendous amount of influence that you can have in a positive way. So as much as the social media side of things can be questionable sometimes, it can also be extremely positive. And I look forward to seeing some of these younger docs, which interestingly Wes and I are not anymore. We used to be those folks coming to the AO, just a couple years out and just kind of being in awe. And now we're on the other side of that somewhat. Looking back and helping the newer folks to come in. And we think that we love the fact that AO is committed to that, to wanting to see that part of the organization grow, because we think that even more so, and we touched again on this earlier, that there isn't as much, at least automatic desire to come out to a meeting. And we think that that's just so critical to sometimes you just have to sit and listen and take in that data and be willing to deal with that, even if it is not it's not a Twitter post. It's something that takes time to digest, and that's something that we should be proud of, because as Wes and I say oftentimes on the show, this stuff is hard. It's not easy. It's actually really hard, and that's okay. That's why we're doctors. That's why we go to school, and I think that's being at the meeting versus watching a webinar. You just, like you guys touched on before, you just can't get that type of interaction in the same way. Go ahead.
The AO has really tried hard to involve itself with social media and try to reach out, because we realize that this is the future, and some of us that are on the board are a little bit well past that time, and so we don't fully always understand as to what the importance is of some of these other processes like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and all the different social media. So you make a very, very good point, and we want the young people to come and to see what we can provide them on a face-to-face basis, as opposed to just over the internet, and see actually what some of the issues are when they look at these lectures. By and large, are extremely pristine and well done. I doubt that anybody's going to be bored with any lecture they go to.
No, and I think that as a, when I was fortunate enough myself to be influenced by people when I was in dental school who were a big part of the AO. And, I got out and immediately tried to dive into that. But it's interesting because a lot of the folks that we see on social media that are getting a lot of their information from that, when you get them aside at a meeting and you actually talk about what's going on, it's oftentimes utter chaos in their actual practice. Things are not always working the way that they like. They're posting the things that look good, but they really don't know why things work and why things don't work. And that's the thing, I think that, everyone really in the end does want their stuff to work. And so if you're, a younger clinician and, you're not sure why things are working or not working, that's why you go to meetings like this is, you can take what you're doing, maybe the things that aren't making as much sense, and you can be rest assured that you're going to see the major issues covered. What is the current state of the science in almost every area that you can imagine at a meeting like this, and come back with maybe not all the answers, but a starting point of who do I need to be reading, who do I need to be seeing more of, how do I incorporate that into my practice. It is a lot of information, but that's what we need because it's just amazing how you talk to folks these days who, where do they learn? And oftentimes it's just a smorgasbord of kind of all over the place type of stuff. And that's what the AO does, is kind of centers, Wes and I always say it's the meeting each year that we go to where we kind of go, okay, are we good in our practice? Are we good? Or is there something we need to be thinking about changing? And I think that too, as you mentioned, Jay, that the organization certainly is making a big push toward trying to encourage younger folks to be a part of that. And I liked, and you mentioned earlier too, that the split between the different specialties and general dentistry. Where do you see the general dentists fitting in with the AO? How do they fit in the Academy of Osseointegration? Because it wasn't always as much of a general dental organization at its origin.
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, to give you and your listeners a little bit of a history, originally it was only the people that had taken the formal courses from Professor Brannemark that started out as AO members. They started out with that list of people, and then they expanded it out to include more people. So for a long time it was surgery, prosthetics, and perio. And then it was obvious to everybody that we were leaving out a huge part of the population, and we wanted to be all-inclusive. So an awful lot of restorative dentists were doing a very nice job and needed to be part of the team. So now there is a concerted effort by the board to always have an equal split among the different specialties, including general dentistry as one of the specialties. So that if there's 12 members, it would be 3, 3, 3, and 3. And so over the years, there has been and there will be a president of AO who's a general dentist. And we think that's very important to be all-inclusive. And it only makes us all stronger because there's nothing better than education. And education brings us all together. So we think it's very important to be all-inclusive with the whole entire group. And there's a lot of other groups that aren't quite so inclusive. So I think that's one of the things that sets AO apart, is that we're very evenly distributed between the various specialties and general dentistry.
I was going to say, I totally agree that having the organization open to the entire field of dentistry has made dentistry better because this organization, as John says, helps to set kind of the standard for the year for our practices, but I know many other practices that are listening and reading and following the Academy and what dentistry that they're bringing to the forefront, putting in front of our are on our desk and allowing us to read, and then two, allowing us to kind of come to these meetings and be around people that we not necessarily have the opportunity to be around. The international crowd is big at the AO as well, and we are that is amazing because it allows us even to interview some of the people that we might necessarily never see at another meeting in the United States. And so I am really excited about this year's AO. One, because John and I have been graciously invited to help really share what the AO annual meeting is all about. And we are really honored by the Academy and allowing us to do this. And this is really just the beginning. This podcast is kind of our launching out point for what's to come. You heard us talking a little bit about some of the people we might be interviewing that night on Thursday night. John, we're going to be down in the welcome reception in kind of the middle of everything. You can't miss it. And so you want to come down because we're going to be interviewing some of those people that Jay was talking about. And then throughout the weekend, you're going to see us running around doing some pretty awesome stuff. And if you see us, please come up to us and shake our hand and tell us a little bit about yourself, because we're excited about that. We're excited about the AO's involvement in that. John?
Yeah, and coming into next year, we'll also be releasing quarterly podcasts along with AO, which we're very excited about as well, just featuring some of the clinicians that we'll be seeing at the meeting, diving even deeper into some of their topics and the things they love to talk about. And when we're at the meeting, I'm excited about getting to ask some of the questions that I think a lot of the audience members want to ask.
Yeah.
Because they finish a lecture. Of course, they're not going to be talking much about products. We can actually ask some of those questions about what are you using in your practice, what's working, tell us how that research is translating into what you're doing, tell us how you're actually using technology. We still want somebody to tell us one day a validated workflow for making a zirconium hybrid all digital. We're getting closer to that. Those are some of those controversial new technologies.
Yeah, John, I think it's time for a call to action. If you're really interested in someone or some topic or something, please send us a message.
Yeah,
right?
Let us know
send
what you
the
want to hear.
AO message, because they'll get it to us. So if you're listening to this on the AO broadcast, send it to them. If you're listening to it on the dental guys side, hey, send it to us. We are going to have unprecedented access to some particular people. So
let
please.
us know who you want us to have on the show. And I think that one thing I would say as far as call to action is, if you're listening to this and you're hearing what the president and also what Michael's saying about what the meeting means, now's the time to get involved. Now's the time to get registered. Now's the time to get down and find out how close you can get to Pike's Place Market. Are there still any hotels available?
Is there any coffee left in
Is
Seattle?
there any coffee? Yes. Well,
there's plenty of hotel space. I want to encourage that. And also, I just want to say one thing. We're sort of doing this in concert with the Asian population. So we're going to have people from China, Malaysia, the whole Far East is we've invited, and I just returned from a trip to Taiwan and Malaysia, and it sounds like there's going to be maybe as many as 100 of these different clinicians coming from that far away to be part of this. So that's and all these people speak perfect English, and they really are very enthusiastic about coming.
Well, we look at some of the research that's being done over in those countries, and there's some amazing stuff that's happening in some of those institutions, and we're seeing it in Jomi, routinely, and so to have some of those folks be among us there, again, amazing access that, as Wes said before, you don't typically get. I don't see why you wouldn't come to the meeting. There's no reason why. There's no excuses now.
It's really sad if you're not coming. March 18th through the 21st, right?
Right.
And it's the 35th AO annual meeting. It can't be in a better place if you are a coffee drinker, right? I keep bringing that up, right? I mean, this is one of the best places to buy coffee in the world.
And we both are coffee snobs and nerds, so we will
if
be
you listen to us
enjoying
before,
it.
right, we'll be over drinking some coffee. And according to Jay, there's plenty of hotel rooms available.
There is.
And so get signed up, and it's going to be a great meeting.
It's going to be a great meeting.
The hotels are easy access to the convention center. There's 3 of them within a block walking distance.
Awesome. Yeah, and the convention center is within blocks of of the market. And I mean, it's easy to get around down there. You don't have to go, Uber around. You walk everywhere. Super convenient place to be. Amazing food. So yeah, I mean, anybody who's been to Seattle knows what we're talking about.
And very safe. Very safe.
Yeah, exactly. And so, well, we really want to, first of all, just appreciate you guys being with us today on the podcast. What an honor to have you guys, and to get to hear directly from the president, from Michael, from you as well, about number one, what this means to you personally, and then what this means to to our profession. We're excited to get to be a part of that. And we appreciate your time very, very much. And we look forward to getting to talk more with the other folks that are involved in meeting planning. So thanks again, guys, for being with us on the show today.
Well, thanks for having us.
Wes, that was an awesome interview. I mean, first of all, thanks so much to the Academy of Osseointegration for the opportunity to get to interview President Jay Malmquist and his son, Michael. That was awesome to have both of them on there. It's a real pleasure to get to know them more and to hear their passion, not only about the meeting, the organization, but also about evidence-based dentistry in their practice. And we're excited about what's coming next.
John, what's coming next is more interviews just like this. And if this is your first time listening to us on the AO, expect more from us, John, as we're going to be interviewing, doing quarterly podcast with special speakers from the Academy.
Right. We're partnering with the Academy for this next year to produce podcasts with them, with some of their best speakers, and we're super excited about that. And if you haven't already registered for the meeting, now's your chance. Go to osseo.org, and you'll find information there about the annual meeting. You can register if you haven't already done so. Check us out at the meeting. We'll be there. We'll be podcasting at the main exhibit hall as well as around. You'll see us around. And at the Young Clinicians Luncheon, we'll be speaking. So I don't know if you can still get tickets. I think it's sold out.
It was sold out the last time we heard. Put your name in on the wait list, and hopefully you can get in to see us there. And listen, follow the AO on social media. There'll be updates about what's going on and what's coming in the future. We're excited about what's going on with the Academy, and we're gracious to them for having us to be able to host this wonderful interview with Dr. Malmquist and his son. And I look for more from them and more from the AO.
Absolutely. So it's been another fun episode. For Wes, I'm John, and we are the Dental Guys.